Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight is the Analects. We'll be covering chapter 4, book 4, I should say, chapters 15, 16, and 17 to start. James, would you mind reading chapters 15, 16, and 17 to get us started?
Okay, let me know if I'm correct.
Sure.
The master said, Shen, my doctrine is that of an all-pervading unity. The disciple Zhang replied, yes. The master went out, and the other disciples asked, saying, what do his words mean? Zhang said, the doctrine of our master is to be true to the principles of our nature and the benevolent exercise of them to others. This and nothing more. Oh, number 16. The master said, the mind of the superior man is conversant with righteousness. The mind of the mean man is conversant with gain. 17. The master said, when we see men of worth, we should think of equaling them. When we see men of a contrary character, we should turn inwards and examine ourselves. That's it.
Yep. Thank you so much, James. Would anybody else like to read the version of the Analects for chapters 15, 16, and 17 for book 4? Aman.
I figured we need to have 2 readings. It's now the ritual that we go through.
I agree, and ritual is important.
And it is Confucius. So I'll read through the DC Lao.
Thank you.
Book 4, 15, the master said, Shen, there is one single thread binding my way together. Sang Tzu assented. After the master had gone out, the disciples asked, what did he mean? Sang Tzu said, the way of the master consists in doing one's best and in using oneself as the measure to gauge others. That is all. 4:16, the master said, the gentleman understands what is moral. The small man understands what is profitable. 4:17, the master said, when you meet someone better than yourself, turn your thoughts to becoming his equal. When you meet someone not as good as you are, look within and examine your own self.
Thank you, Aman.
So,
Jason, yes, feel free to share.
According to the ritual, so okay, so chapter 15. The master said, Phew, Shen, my Tao is run through by a single thread. Zhengzi, who is Shen, the name Shen, okay, said, yes. Masters went out. Other disciples asked, what does he mean? Zhengzi said, the Tao of our master is nothing more than loyalty, which means devotion, and forgiveness, which means reciprocity. Okay, so I think this one I'm taking a different way because I don't know how everyone reads this one feel. First, according to all the record, Zhengzi, okay, this guy Zhengzi, or Confucius call him Shen, is the second youngest disciple. He is 43 years younger than Confucius. And the Confucius, I think in the later chapter, Confucius talk about he used the word du, which means slow in reaction. So definitely he is not a smart student. And the second thing, if you notice, when Confucius say call somebody, usually in Chinese will say 生也, okay, like when he talked to 子贡, he will say, 是也. But here, Confucius used the word who means a question. So basically, it's a little bit impatient to 曾子. Okay, so kind of, I think the proper word in English, probably like few, or, kind of impatient, because probably have early conversation, and 曾子 or Shen, okay, being not understand or, kind of mess up. So Confucius say, come on, okay, my Tao is run through by a single thread. It's that simple. So strange, and Zheng Zi, instead of ask further question, he said, yes. So Confucius probably, I have to assume, not happy, because this situation Confucius leave, okay? And then the disciple ask, what does he mean? Okay, remember, if Zheng Zi is the youngest disciple, the other disciple will be much older than him. So a lot of people, a lot of translators, a lot of people read it as they ask Zheng Zi, please tell us what does Confucius mean? Actually, it's probably the other way. They are questioning him, okay? Why you say so? Okay, what does you mean? Or what does he mean? Okay, why Confucius got angry? Okay, something like this. It's not really like, please tell us, teach us. No, they are questioning him, okay? Because they are much older than Zheng Zi. So Zheng Zi say, our master's way is no more than loyalty and forgiveness, which is not wrong, okay? But we should read not like a golden rule, okay? We should read it as entry level, okay? The starting point, okay? From Zheng Zi's point of view. So I think I just provide another view to read this one. If you put in the historical background, we should read it in this way, because this word, 无道一以贯之, my Dao, is run through by a single thread. I think in the later part, book 15, Confucius used the same word, okay, again. But this time he is talking the same word to one of the best students, 子贡, okay, because 子贡 is crazy Confucius. Say, oh, you know so much, you are erudite. And Confucius kind of like say, okay, you don't understand, because my way is run through a single thread. Okay, so that's Confucius' answer to a smart student. So I think that's the difference here. So the same word, that's the famous word. Okay, my Dao has been my Dao is run through a single thread. Okay, this one is a very famous word, but in Eden, Confucius used 2 times. This time talking to his youngest and the most dumb student, and then second time he used to his smart student. So when later on in book 15, we should see this one one more time. So chapter 16, the master said, 君子 comprehends according to righteousness, which he, okay, and the small man, that's the opposite of 君子. Remember, Confucius like to use 君子 and the small man as a contract. So 君子 comprehends according to righteousness. Small man comprehends according to benefit. So I see other translation. I think here the important thing is 喻, this word. That means understanding. So he understanding basic on righteousness, which means duty. Another meaning is duty. So you understand things based on duty. So in this way, I will call him the ontologist, right? Because that's understood by your obligation, by the moral standard. And the small man understanding according to benefit. This word, 利, okay, means benefit, but I think the proper meaning should be utilization. So another way to say 君子 is the ontologist, and the small man is utilitarian. Okay, and if you want to put in the Western philosophy, then you can say Kant is a 君子, and Jeremy Bentham, okay, is a small man. Okay, so that's another way to look at Number 17, the master said, when we see worthy people, we should think of equaling them. When we see unworthy people, we should turn inward to examine ourselves. Okay, again, this one has no subject. So I just have to use the word we consider as, because there's no listen, just Confucius say something. So I will assume he is talking to everybody should do this way, including himself. And the question here is the word worthy. Chinese word is 贤. Okay, this word 贤. In most of translators worthy or unworthy, which I'm not sure is correct in the meaning of English, because worthy, unworthy probably have some meaning of useful, benefit, this kind of meaning. But I think in Chinese, this word also means your capability. You are capable to do something, and you are doing it in a nice way. Okay. So I'm still looking for what's the right English word to translate this word. So if anybody has a suggestion, and then I really like to know. Yeah, thank you.
Sounds unworthy sounds good to me because it adds contrast to the initial one was a man of worth, or I forget how you translated it, but that was a positive example. And then we try to equal them because they are worthy people. And then when we see someone that's of a contrary character or an unworthy character, that's when we should not point them out and shame them like some people would, but we should rather turn inwards and examine ourselves.
So does the English word worthy, unworthy also imply your capability?
No, they're direct opposites. Worthy is good. Someone is who is like, in other words, if he's a doctor, he's someone who has cured people and saved people. But an unworthy doctor would be someone who's a quack. A worthy person would be someone who helps others and does good business, doesn't cheat people. And an unworthy person would be someone who has lied to his friends and relatives, who has disappointed people.
My point is in Chinese word 贤 also means you are capable. So a doctor, not only he's nice, have a good heart to do something good, but also means he is skillful, good in medicine. Okay, okay. So that's the word I'm looking for. So
that's consistent with the
you
English.
Think, okay, thank you. So you think worthy mean is a good word. Okay.
Yeah, that not just a man of virtue, but someone who actually delivers good. Yeah, that's a man of worth.
You're muted, Joe.
Oh, I just called on you. So go ahead, Ahmad.
No, I was enjoying listening to this because, yeah, I did look at Xian and wonder if virtuous was the better choice, because it's another common way of it being translated. But I liked worthy because worthy does have that connotation of not just character, but capability or quality. The only other thing I really was dying to say was about that opening line to verse 15, which I think Jason translates as very, very well. I wish we were translating into Yiddish, because I think oive would have really just cinched it, because that's really the sentiment that's being expressed there is, hey, Shen, and then iterating. Look, there's one lesson here. And Shen just saying yes and walking away, shaking his head. But the interesting part about this tiny little vignette to me is that it's added in the Analects. This snippet of a student not exactly getting it, or not not living up to it, you almost might say, is captured here as a telling example of the teachings of Confucius. And so when he gives the answer, the Tao of our master is nothing more than devotion and reciprocity. He's like, I think Jason said it very well. He's correct. It's one of those weird instances where you're correct, you're not right. Because if you were right, you would have been able to say this to the master with confidence. You would have authentically expressed yourself in that moment instead of deferring to him. You would have been willing to rely on his forgiveness were you to be wrong, and reasonably expect a good correction from him. And so this is somebody, like Jason said, who half gets it enough that, I can mumble out the right answer from the back of the classroom, but I haven't embodied the lessons yet enough to stand up and say what is what in front of the master. And for me, it's a very poignant little insight into Confucius' classroom and the sort of intimidation I think some of his students may have labored under. Excuse me. 416, I think that you can put this in Kant and Benson's sort of terminology, deontology and utilitarianism. But I do think there's something else at work here, which is about the selfishness of the person. Benefit is almost always something that you find a way to measure, whereas righteousness is simply knowing that you are doing what is the correct thing. And so I think that's part of the reason why this idea that the small man seeks to comprehend things according to profit or according to benefit really does sort of capture the venal character of the smaller man. And as we already discussed, I liked the choice of Shin, unworthy for Shin. I think it was a good way, and it does make for a really eloquent contrast with worthy versus unworthy. It may be laden a little bit with Western ideas of, class system and moral worth, but I don't think that's necessarily what's being expressed there. It's more just worthy of what? And I think what Confucius would truly say is worthy of being called a junsa, whether, if they really live up to what that's supposed to mean.
Thank you so much, Shaman, for those comments. I would like to come back to the social class comment that you had a moment ago, but first let's go to George.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I wanted to address the characterization of Jeremy Bentham, as not just someone who's interested in benefit, but as someone who defines benefit as that which creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So there's two stages. The one of lesser morality would not take that second step. They would simply stop at, does it benefit me? Where Bentham and the utilitarians say, well, is it beneficial to everyone as much as possible? And is it also righteous, through other measures?
That's an interesting take. James.
Yeah, that was those were interesting. I like the number 15. We talked about 17 and that's a beautiful translation by Jason, and I think I really liked also the translation of number 15, and I see number 15 as kind of like, well, what is the way? He comes in and he says, this the doctrine. This is the doctrine of all-pervading unity. It is the way. And what does that mean? And somebody says, I guess one of the senior members says, it's true to the principles of our nature, and it's the benevolent exercise of these principles to others, or reciprocity, perhaps. And this, the other word that comes to my mind is propriety. It's in some of the other chapters, but Confucius might have used the word for propriety. In other words, what is propriety? Well, propriety is that kind of like combination of the proper action and reciprocity. So when you do the right thing, like in the movie, and Jimmy, and when you act according to the way others kind of like expect you to act, that they want to act in the same way, they believe that everyone believes that they should act with reciprocity, then you're basically following the rules of Confucius. So I think that's basically I love the fact that he's putting this idea across, that this is a method. This is actually a method for thinking of what is the right thing to do in a wide variety of situations. This is the Confucius way, perhaps.
Thank you, James. We'll go to Jason, then George.
Yeah, I just like to give you the reference. On the chapter 15, Confucius said, "My Tao is run through by a single thread." And in book 15, chapter 3, the situation is like this. Confucius said, he used the word 是, which is 子贡. He said, 是. He is not use few. He not say who. He said 也. So it's more positive. He said, 是. You think I have know many things and then study a lot? Do you think I don't know many things and study a lot? And the 子贡and 是 say, oh yes, why not? And then Confucius said, no. He used the word 非也. Okay, that means not a negation. That means kind of like proud of himself. No, not like this. Because my Tao is run through by a single thread. So Confucius is quite happy in this situation, because Zhi Gong, who really knows what's going on, because Zhi Gong know Confucius know many things, and like everything he knows, okay, poetry, politics, art, everything he knows, music, everything know. And Confucius say, hey, do you think I know so many things? And Zhi Gong say, yeah, of course, why not? You know so many things. Confucius say, no. Because my Tao is run through by one single stream. So I think that's another way if you compare to this one. That's a very strong contrast between these two.
Jason, George, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I wanted to address the matter of how we determine what's right, because, we can, I think, generally rely on what others believe to be right as our criteria. But there are some important ways in which the majority does wrong. So it can't be just, we determine the rightness or wrongness of a thing based on what others think. There has to be, more compelling motivations.
No, I agree with that. I mean, it's true. It requires a degree of reason, right? As in a set of standards, and hopefully, standards that actually allow you to transcend what social norms norms you may feel to be unjust. I do want to come back to something that Aman talked about in one of the commentaries that I had read, and I'm probably going to mess up one of the words here. It said, some commentators argue that the distinction between the gentleman and the petty person should be understood in terms of social class, because Xoren, X-I-A-O-R-E-N, is often used in context to indicate simply the common people. It is clear, though, that Confucius felt anyone from any social class could potentially become a gentleman, and that social status did not necessarily correspond to actual moral worth. It is apparent that in the Analects, at least, that gentlemen, the Xoren distinction refers to moral character rather than social status.
So can you spell the word
Yeah,
A-I-O-R-E-N?
it's X-I-A-O-R-E-N.
Shaoren.
笑人.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
I was hoping you would know,
小
actually.
人. Oh, 小人, small man.
Small man.
小 man means a small man.
Oh,
I
okay,
translate as small man.
okay.
小 is small, 人 is
No,
person.
小人. Okay, so it's talk about. Okay, so I think the commentary about the social class is right, because that's a Confucius. I would say his contribution, because 小人, if you just read the analect, you probably think about. That's why I translate the this one as 利 instead of pursuing profit. I like to translate as a utilitarian. The reason is this. During that time, if you look at the social class, they have the 君子, okay, who we translate as a worthy man, or we translate as a gentleman. It's a social class. That means it's an aristocratic, aristocrat, allow the low-ranking aristocrat. So they are 君子. 小人, it's common people. Okay, the people, the regular people, you can call 小人. So not really has good, bad, or basically the social class. But Confucius, he as an educator, he kind of like try to tell people, if you don't do something, blah, 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 a lot of things, you will be like 小人, small man. Even if your social class is 小人, if you do something, you will be like 君子. Okay, so I think that's Confucius. We can call it the Confucius revolution idea to accommodate the social movement. Because during that time, I think in Europe, we also see the same situation. When the economic grows, right, the common people start to dress up. They look like the aristocrat. So the government have to set a law. Okay, you cannot wear a hat if you are not in the royal family, something like this. So same situation here. And then Confucius just kind of like commented this one and say, okay, it's not defined by other things, defined by your ritual or your moral standard, how you behave, then you can be 君子 or you can be 小人. I think
That's very important. Thank you for clarifying that. Kevin.
I only got a question about 415. What's the attitude about Confucius and things? The first time, okay. So I'm gonna tell you, it's my door is through a single thread. So it's like simple. And change the seat. Okay, nothing more than the loyalty and forgiveness. That's Zheng's understanding. Is his understanding correct based situation? And does Confucius mean? Run through a single thread. Is his student understand correct? That's my question.
Aman, please. Yeah, by all means.
I'm not going to pretend to have an absolute answer here. What I am going to pretend is that perhaps what sorry, I actually had to stop and look back at the quote. Perhaps what Zhengzi says is, like I said before, correct without being right. It's the idea that from these qualities, from devotion and from an understanding of reciprocity, you might have the basic formula or a near, not definition, but glossary entry for the concept of ren, which has been something that Confucius has iterated again and again. This is fundamental to being a good and worthy person. You must have ren in spades. And this is something you have to develop even before you develop the learning, even before you develop wisdom or these other qualities. Just taken, right from off their own basis. Devotion, that is to someone else. And reciprocity is also a quality that considers someone else. So he got it kind of. He failed to see the large implications of it, but at least he got sort of the meat and potatoes of the feast in that answer.
Thank you for that, Aman. James.
Yeah, that was great. I thought I had a group that I was meeting with in Orange County, no, in San Diego County, and it was interesting intellectual group, just a general people from sort of all walks of life, a lot of professors, and one of the things that one of the meetings was on forgiveness. And it's funny, I noticed that forgiveness for a lot of people is conditional and reciprocal. So they're afraid of forgiveness. Most people are afraid of unlimited forgiveness because they think it has to be reciprocated. And I was like maybe in the minority of people that didn't agree with that we thought that forgiveness was a general virtue, and that when you forgive people, there's always the possibility that things are going to go very well following forgiveness, where if you don't forgive people, that guarantees a separation. So in other words, not only physical separation, but possibly a mental separation where you carry a grudge over time and are not able to equalize a relationship. So this reciprocal idea of forgiveness is one of the highest virtues, I think, because it gives you a possibility of having a pure relationship where if you don't forgive, then if forgiveness is, if it's not, if things are not forgiven between people, then the harm to the relationship becomes permanent. So that's kind of my attitude, and I don't know if maybe Jason can clear this up. Would you say that the verse accepts my interpretation or contradicts it?
I actually really like this question in general. I think that this is important. I would have been with you in that minority, in the sense that I always found forgiveness more about yourself than it is the other individual. and the inability to forgive, not forget, but forgive, is ultimately more of a more detrimental to yourself than it is to the other person. But anyway, go ahead, Jason. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just directly relate to Kevin's question. Okay, if I pretend I'm the expert, okay, make a judgment, I will say Zheng Zi's answer is correct. Only mistake is he should not say nothing more than something, or that's all. Because his answer, just like Aman said, is correct, but not right, not overall right. So his answer is loyalty and forgiveness. So we can say that's all about Confucius Tao. Okay, we can say that because we start from there. That's everybody can do. So if you think about these two answers, I just have to defend for Zheng Zi. Even he is young, he being considered stupid, but that's a good person. Just like I believe if you ask Plato, is Aristotle a smart student? Plato definitely will say no. It's like so young kids, right? He's 40 something younger than Plato, and then so. But this kind of person are important because they work hard, and then turn out they bring up a lot of things. So the reason I would say the answer is very thoughtful is this. He talked about two things, loyalty and forgiveness. That's on the surface. In Chinese word, 忠, loyalty means you are do your best to your boss, your superior. Forgiveness is you are forgive your the people working for you, subordinate. But you also have another meaning is strong loyalty. You loyal to your superior. You also do your best for your own thing. Okay. Forgiveness is forgive your subordinate, but you also practice reciprocity. How to call it?
Reciprocity.
Right. Reciprocal. Okay. So that's the way. And then that's the thing everybody can do. So put this way, Zheng Zi's answer is not only right, it's not only correct, it's very correct. Only mistake he said is nothing more than that. Actually, probably more than this. So that's I have to comment.
I think you are actually right by using the word reciprocity, James. So, Kevin.
Thank you, guys. Honestly, analyze this, and it's also about the paradox, Jason, about loyalty, forgiveness, and devotion. Reciprocity. First, I would say introduce to Buddhism. Buddhism is about your own heart, your own feeling. You think you one thing with Chinese way, you help others. You could actually make your own happy. I'm going to stop there. And now, by the way, this chapter last we should enjoy. It's very practical. The 4:16 they say compared to Zheng Zi and Xiaodeng, a small person, and about Yi, righteousness and profit. It's very out for me as when I growing up, if people talk money directly, especially my close friend or family, I feel uncomfortable. That's just by nature. Slowly I get used to it. But however, it's if practical Yi righteousness was something higher than the dollar value that make you happy.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the 4:16. 4:17. It's so it's also comparable. That's very nice about the pattern. You see the pattern is the first 借邪 we use the word say, right? Kind of for me, and I would say still more than 60% about virtue, virtuous person. If you think something is good. Something is better than you or good. You follow them, learn from it. If you think something is bad, you try learn from them also. Try, think about it internally. Do we have that kind of mistake, that kind of flaw? So this is very practical, both ways thinking. The sentence is short, but very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I really liked 18 as well. It's not just about seeing the quality in others, but also about the possibility of using it as using insights about others' shortcomings for self-improvement.
So I would add one more. It's about here is very interesting. They see the structure. Normally we use a modern way. I like this. Okay, I'm going to learn from it. Actually, you can learn from something not right or something you think okay, not something not correct. This is very interesting. Another way about Eastern thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll go to George, and then when I want to get to the next, I believe it's 4 chapters.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, with forgiveness, it certainly benefits us to forgive others because holding a grudge, anger is something that hurts us. But my question is, what is the rationale that Confucius used to forgive others? In my mind, we forgive others because they don't understand the wrong they're doing. The Greeks understood this, that basically whenever we do anything, at the time we're doing it, we believe it's the right thing. So I think forgiveness comes in where we perhaps speculate that the person wasn't educated, the person wasn't raised in a certain way that would allow them to understand the wrongness of what they were doing. So my question is, like, did Confucius address that? The reasons, we forgive others because we acknowledge their limitations.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The Socrates question, nobody does wrong intentionally. They only act out of ignorance. So it's, does evil even exist? And, that's essentially one of those philosophical questions. What would have Confucius have answered to that? I mean, I look at it a little bit differently, but I don't know. I don't have any context as to what Confucius' motivations would have been. Because I could tell you this, that by not forgiving people, it also, you have a, sometimes when you hold a grudge, you can actually carry that grudge into another relationship. It could impact additional relationships. So, so I'm thinking about if somebody makes a transaction and they aren't honest in their transaction, well, then are you going to treat everybody else as not being honest? That wouldn't be necessarily just, but that's just one way of, I was thinking about how not forgiving can actually damage future relationships. In addition, that's just one, but I don't know what Confucius, maybe Madeline has an answer.
Actually, I was thinking about forgiveness and carrying over into other relationships. I thought, well, if you're a Buddhist, it actually carries over into other lifetimes.
Right. Yeah, I believe isn't there a saying there, an arrow will strike you twice if, once, when it hits you, and the second one is when you don't necessarily forgive the person. It's something along those lines. I'm, butchering the actual saying. Jason.
Yeah, let me direct answer George's question. Okay, Confucius do talk about the meaning of forgiveness in book 15. Okay, the Zigong, the best student, one of the best students, asked Confucius, is there has one word you can use for the whole life? Okay, and the Confucius say, yes, that's forgiveness. He used the Chinese word shu. Okay, we translate as forgiveness. And the Confucius has further explanation. Okay, he said that's reciprocity. He talked about if you don't want, don't give to others. Okay, that's Confucius' direct answer to George. Okay.
So with that, I would kindly ask James if you wouldn't mind reading again chapters 18, 19, 20, and 21.
All right. Number 18. The master said, in serving his parents, a son may remonstrate with them, but gently. When he sees that they do not incline to follow his advice, he shows an increased degree of reverence, but does not abandon his purpose. And should they punish him, he does not allow himself to murmur. So that's pretty thick. Number 19. The master said, while his parents are alive, the son may not go abroad to a distance. If he does go abroad, he must have a fixed place to which he goes. Number 20. The master said, if the son for 3 years does not alter from the way of his father, he may be called filial. Number 21. The master said, the years of parents may by no means not be kept in the memory as an occasion at once for joy and for fear. We're going to be talking about this all night. Thanks.
No, we're going to stay on schedule. We have a goal. We have a goal to get to 26. So,
right.
So yeah, we could be talking about this all night though. We can come back to it though. Mom, would you like to read yours as well, or?
Yeah, I can read the DC Lao.
Thank you.
Excuse me. 418. Or wait. Yes, 418. The master said, in serving your father and mother, you ought to dissuade them from doing wrong in the gentlest way. If you see your advice being ignored, you should not become disobedient, but should remain reverent. You should not complain, even if in so doing, you wear yourself out. 419, the master said, while your parents are alive, you should not go too far afield in your travels. If you do, your whereabouts should always be known. 420, the master said, if for 3 years a man makes no changes to his father's ways, he can be said to be a good son. 421, the master said, a man should not be ignorant of the age of father and mother. It is a matter, on the one hand, for rejoice, and on the other, for anxiety.
That's a very interesting one. As James said, we might be discussing that for a little bit. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, okay, I think this 4, I like to group these 4 together because these 4 are all talking about xiao, how to treat your parent. And surprisingly, these 4 are very practical. Okay, we can do it now. So I think that's very, very good. So chapter 18, the master said, when we serve parents, we may occasionally remonstrate with them. If we observe that they are not inclined to follow, we shall keep respecting them without disobeying and continue working on them without complaining. So I heard James' translation, I think talk about even they punish you and you still not complain. I think it's because they translated this word now as punishment. I just have to say I disagree because that means not means punishment. That means you keep working on that and without complaining. So that's what I like to say.
Persevere.
Chapter 19, the master said, while parents are alive, it is better not to travel far away. If you do travel, you should let them know where your destination. Again, this word, you必有方, doesn't mean you have a fixed place to go. Well, it's a fixed place. That means if you travel, you have to tell your parents, where are you going? So that's the idea. So in today's language, I think that especially this one is very practical because, if your parents still alive, when you travel, you can, unlike before, right now you just text your parents and say, okay, I'm in New York for 3 days, that's it. So I think that's why I think that's very practical. Chapter 20, the master said, one who does not alter his late father's style or his way for 3 years after his death may be called xiao. So here is the definition xiao, and I think the 3 years basics Confucius like to say is you have to follow your father's style. Okay. For 3 years, even the text, the Chinese text doesn't say after the death of your father. I think he meant, for after his death. Otherwise, as long as your father is alive, according to Confucius, you have to always follow his way, not just follow your father for 3 years and they say, bye-bye, I'm doing my own way. So I think that's, I have to put it after his death. And then, of course, he used father, then used mother. So, but in 19, we talk about parents, okay, father and the mother. And 20, only follow fathers. Okay. That's a Confucius said, not I said. 21, the master said, parents' age should not be ignored. Sometimes it will be a source of joy because they are still alive. And sometimes it would be a source of worry because they will die one day. So in the Confucian tradition, right? So if people ask you, oh, how old is your mom? And you kind of, I think it's 30, 86, 88. I'm not quite sure. It's very improper. Okay, improper. So you should not say, forget your mother or father's age when people ask you, 85, okay, or turning 86 this July. You need to know. And I think in the later chapter, Confucius also tells one thing is important, is if your parent is alive, you should not say you are old, okay? Especially in front of your parents, oh, I'm old already. That's wrong, okay? So you should pretend you are young and make them happy. So I think these are very practical advice for everybody, doesn't matter in ancient time or today, in American or in China or in Taiwan, in every place. I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
That's practical advice outside your parents, actually. Not to say, not to say, hey, I'm old, and then you're around a bunch of people that are older than you. Aman, please.
I'm going to do something just a little different than what I've done in the past in commentary, because this section, being so dedicated to Shao, demands a good movie recommendation. There's a movie that came out a few years back called, I believe it's called The Farewell. It was, filmed in 2019, and it stars Awkwafina. If you've not seen it, it's a wonderful movie. The basic of the plot, without any spoilers, is that the matriarch of this family, who lives in Beijing, is diagnosed with cancer, and the doctors do not tell her, they tell her sister, who then disseminates it to the entire family. And while we would see that as a violation of HIPAA laws, in traditional cultural China, it's considered considerate to not worry someone of her age and her position with it, something she can do nothing about, really. But the family then fabricate a wedding as an excuse to bring everybody back to China to say goodbye to grandma. Yes, thank you. It's a phenomenal movie, and it's autobiographical. I'll give you the spoiler now so that nobody thinks that, you know, oh, I shouldn't see this. This was autobiographical. The filmmaker made this movie, and 6 years after it came out, her grandmother was asking, when do I get to see your movie? Because grandma managed to live that much longer than anticipated, which I'm sure had to make for a very awkward family situation. But this is the quintessence of a family's duty to their parent, to their aged parent, and how they must absolutely do whatever must be done to care for them in their old age and treat them respectfully and treat them with consideration. And Aquafina, who plays the main, is the Americanized girl who's having trouble wanting to remonstrate with her father and her uncle about why aren't we telling grandma she's going to die? And they keep saying, no, 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 we can't do that. It's a movie that is an exercise in these 4 passages, at more than anything else I could think of, because it really captures this whole notion of what is the filial child? What is, you know, the good parent? What is it to contend and care for your aging parents? And there are many other little nuances in there as well, like the fact that the grandmother refers to her favorite granddaughter as Shahaitsa, which means stupid child, which is a very Confucian way of referring to someone you love, putting them in the humbler position. Yeah, I recommend this to understand these passages. The only other thing I will say is take these passages back into context of what we just discussed. My Tao is thread through by one thread. And in just a few verses, we're back to a reiterating shall, reiterating shall, and reiterating shall. What is a good man? And then we're talking about reiterating shall and reiterating shall. So the lesson that he was intimating at is now being spelled out once again. Here's the starting block for getting it.
Very well said. Thank you, Aman. Would
What
anybody
was
else?
what was the name of that movie again, Amon?
It's in the chat. I just put it in
Good.
the chat.
It's
for you.
called The Farewell, and yeah, it's got some great actors, but just beautifully written story.
So great review.
So if anybody would like to, Jason first, but if anybody would like to make any comments on verses 18, 19, 20, or 21, please feel free to raise your hand or type exclamation point in the chat. Jason first, please, followed by James.
Yeah, I just have to say that movie I watch, and we watch in the whole family. So basically split in the older generation and the younger generation. Younger generation say, no, that's totally stupid. That's wrong way to do it. And older generation will say, okay, that's a beautiful movie. So I belong to the younger generation. The reason is, I think if I'm old and then my kids kind of fool me in this way, I would be very, very angry. So I would never do this. And of course, that's my personal belief. And I always see knowing is higher than shall. Okay, so that's just my own opinion.
I do have comments about 19 and 21, but I'm going to hold off until everybody has an opportunity to speak. James, Kevin, followed by George.
Yeah, this is like these are complicated and tough. I think 19 and 21 kind of strike me as kind of personal. It's going to strike me in my core. You know, in other words, as a parent, and kind of like seeing my relationship with my kids, and realizing that I'm very hands off, right? So I've got two managers, two girls that are managers, and a boy who is the most different from me, but he picked up everything that he should have. In other words, he picked up the drive, the intellectual drive that I have. So, but he tries to be the opposite. In other words, and this is what happens, I think, with and I think the last one, I didn't quite catch your translation, Jason, because I think I was trying too hard. I was thinking too hard. The idea of the rejoicing or the joy of the relationship, but also the anxiety that's inherent in the relationship. And so I think this definitely applies with him, especially the other ones to a certain extent too. But with him, there's this kind of like turn towards, well, I'm a little bit liberal, right? And he tends to be he tries to be more on the extreme conservative side. So this is kind of like the idea that you have a image of your parents, but you might want to simply like split off in the opposite direction. Also on the issue of responsibility, he's not responsible, you know, where responsibility was fairly high in me. And that's why that's one of the reasons the girls, everything turned out well. But with the younger boy, he's 25 now. But in other words, he doesn't have solid personal responsibility goals, except that he wants to end up in a good place, but he doesn't follow a path towards independence. Right now, he depends on his mother. So, and tries to depend on me when he can, but lately he has not been. So it's really interesting how and it's not just that. It's not just that my experience, my personal experience, but it's also that the kind of society that we live in now, there is a tendency for children to go in different directions from their parents. The relationships in families are not as filial as they once were. In other words, there's more to take. There's this idea, I think it was really popular in the 50s. This idea is that the parents want you to be a doctor, but you are going to be an artist, you know, and it's the Mendelssohn that happened with Moses Mendelssohn, his son, Isaac Mendelssohn. The son wanted to be a musician. They were, you know, first he had to be a doctor. First you have to be a doctor, then you could be a musician, you know, and that's what happened, right? So, and he practically invented modern music. Believe it or not, Mendelssohn was a kind of traditionalist, but he was also an experimenter. So he was he was a brilliant musician, it turned out, and his music is sticky. You know, we still have his music in the classical repertoire. So, these families of geniuses end up that way. They end up with a lot of angst as well as joy. Anyone else?
No, very, very well said. We have a few people online, though. I would like to hear if anybody has any comments on James's take on these 4 chapters, as well as some of the things that he added in there. So we'll go with Kevin, followed by George, followed by Penny or Brian.
First, I want to share one culture background. For example, why we have a show. The one culture said why we have kids, especially boys. When the reason being, we want them when we get old, they can help us. you get old, how get old. That's background culture. Chinese called 养儿防未老. Okay. Then the 418, it's very interesting how not just about the show, it's how do you respect parents. Normally we get parents as a general is blah blah, keep talking the same thing. We get ignore give the annoyance. However, here the thing show you something, even they are not right or something, you still listen to them. And that's 18. And about 19, that's a traditional practice. If your parents still exist life, you should take care of them psychologically. Don't to go too far. Those days don't have phone call, don't have video. At least nowadays, give a call, give a video. That's obviously practical way. And also the last one, when you travel a destination. One thing as parents, if you kind of think about it, normally you are student or even work. If parents supposed to 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock back home, you still not. You may be okay, but parents so nervous. So that's one of the reasons behind. And 20 about the here interest I just learned from inspire me. 3 years if you didn't change parents your father's style, that's mean the show. For me, what's the father's style? It's just like I guess James managed that the different directions. May your father maybe expect even better. That's normally parents, general parents hope their next generation better than his life, or or opposite and other direction. And 21 is one when you get old, the last one. One side you got happy, and other side you get worried about your parents. Good seeing, they are okay today, but you worry about it tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to come back to 21 if possible. The idea of rejoicing that they have lived so long, but there are anxieties that come along with extended life. In any case, we have next up, we have George, followed by Penny, and then Allison.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, in 18, I doubt that Confucius was limiting it to the father and mother, because I think when we rebuke anyone, we should be gentle as possible. But I think, it's most important, I think, with our parents. In terms, I think 19 is time specific. I think people have alluded to this. Back then we didn't have, cell phones where you could be in touch with someone, from across the world. For 20, my question is man should make no changes to his father's ways. The first question is that referring to the father's morality? And if that's the case, why isn't the mother included? And the second question is it just about morality, or was it in that time that it was an act of virtue to follow in your father's ways in terms of a trade? Thank you.
Let me answer George's question. Okay, I forget to mention. Okay, this 420. 20, right? 20, it's this about 3 years. Actually, it's a repeat from the book 1. Okay, if you go back. But book 1 is much longer. So book 1 is said when first it's only talk about father, not mother. Okay, so in this one. But the other talk about parents, father and the mother. Here, this one only talk about father. The whole sentence in book 1, he talk about when father is alive, we have to observe that person's inspiration. Okay, and when fathers die, Okay, you have to observe that person's behavior, his action. Okay, for 3 years, he doesn't change his father's way. Okay, then we can call him xiao. That's the full dialogue in book 1. And in this one, book 4, only take the last part. So there's a scholarly debate about why doing this. Most likely it's mistake, but another possibility is they try to reinforce the importance of 3 years. So if you put the whole sentence together, you will know. When you say 3 years and you base on Confucius' xiao to treat that person, I think he meant, well, you should behave as you behaved when your father alive for 3 years. Then you be free. Okay. Well, Confucius didn't say that, but basically Confucius said, so the basic assumption is this: when you live, you always live with your parents. Okay, that's number one. You don't just like live in America and live with your parents in Taiwan. That's not the situation. The people should always live with your parents. So when my father is alive, I behave a certain way because my father is always with me. Okay, so when he passed away, I should assume behave exactly like he's still alive for 3 years. Then I can be called xiao. Okay, but he didn't say after 3 years, but he said 3 years.
Thank you for that answer. That actually clears some things up for me as far as just, I didn't know you always lived with your parents back then. But Brian or Penny?
This is me. I just wanted to say, well, Kevin, hi, alluded to it that, you know, about the taking care of parents in China, and Brian was a college professor and he had quite a Chinese students, and we did go to China for a couple weeks. And it was, you know, during the one child era, which is pretty much so continued. One thing that he does, to dinner with different college students he had, and they were very concerned about what type of job they would be getting, because since they were the only child, they knew they were going to have to support their parents in their own old age. And I mean, these are college students who are saying, well, you know, I want to get a government job because, you know, I need to have a dependable income because it's on me to take care of mom and dad. And it was amazing, you know, for us to hear college students making career choices on, you know, the fact that they were going to have to support their parents.
Yeah, it's actually demonstrates a practical way this is actually still applicable into in China today. Allison, you had your hand up. Would you like to make a comment? And then followed by Amon, unless Amon actually.
Yeah, I was thinking about with 20, how it's kind of interesting how you can with children, you can try and tell them to do things completely different from how you've done things, and they sort of wind up being like you anyway. So it's interesting when they're saying, you know, do what your father does, but sometimes you're trying to put them on a different path that you think might be a little more financially stable, and then they follow you anyway, whether you want to or not, you know. And then I think also my other comment about 21 is that I think it's so true that when parents you know, live a very, very long life, is that you know, you rejoice that they're still alive, and there's a lot of anxiety, but I think there's also just a sadness at seeing that they're not what they once were. You know, like when you've had one parent die at a younger age, they sort of die on top in a way, but when you watch one really decline, they almost become like an infant in their older age. And you know, it's sad to not see them as like, I don't know, like my dad's 91, and I always thought of him as such a powerful figure, and to see him weak and sort of helpless is, you know, it's like I miss seeing him as like my strong dad, and he's just not. But but at the same time, I rejoice that he's still with me, you know? So those are just some little comments and thoughts.
No, I appreciate the contribution. There is a saying that you're a child twice and an adult once. So that, yes, in our older age, that we tend to need care just as if we were a child again. And seeing that process is actually quite difficult. Very difficult, I would add. Aman, followed by Jason.
Yeah, Allison, thank you for that, because you took me back to memories of my grandmother. She lived to be 94 and was with me my whole life. It did remind me a lot of that. I didn't want to do a line-by-line breakdown the same way. I just wanted to address a couple of points out of each of these four, because I believe it was Kevin who said there's more here than simply shout. There are other lessons being imparted. And I think it starts with that 418, where I like that Jason uses the term remonstrate, because that is precisely the appropriate way of expressing the idea that you are not simply under the thrall of a tyrant. You have a responsibility to speak up, and a son would have that responsibility to their parents to actually speak up, to try and steer them right, as it were. But that it is ultimately in their hands. But it's this idea that there is this duty to speak up, to not simply nod your head and go along with everything at every occasion, that demarks Confucian thought from being simply a top-down sort of hierarchical power structure. The 419, I know my mother still says, text me when you get home, anytime I speak to her. And it kind of reminds me of what Allison was saying, because now it's gotten to the point I'm telling her, text me when you get home, because she's 70 and I don't love the idea of her driving, because her driving terrifies me. And we only live, 45 minutes apart. But if she's going to be on the road for a while, I do find myself concerned. And then as far as expectations for children go, I agree. There is this idea that it is a matter of your character, that you still behave as though your parents were alive for that long without altering how you would behave in their presence, because you respect them so much for it. But George did bring up this notion of, was there an idea of upward mobility, or was this also to do with what you did in, just taking over the legacy of family? And I do think there was an element of that, because that sort of social mobility was not very much, it was a new development in Confucian's time. And all of these, that he is training are embarking on this new idea of being able to advance their position, which was not something readily available to most people. We really get our idea about this sort of generational improvement in the West. I think a lot of it comes from many different places, but I'm looking at a John Adams quote, which I don't want to read in full. I'll paraphrase it. I'll put the full quote into the text. But in a nutshell, what his quote states is that he studied the arts of politics and war so that his children could become mathematicians and philosophers, so that their children could become artists and poets. And it's kind of this idea that we're laying out the necessary foundations for an advancement of generations, one after the other after the other. And what made me think of this quote actually was, James, you talking about, children veering off from the expectations because they want to be artists or they want to be something else, which John Adams would say, well, then we've achieved our goal. Not that that's necessarily the case, but it did make me think of this quote. So I put it in the chat for anyone to read if they really want to read the long quote. But yeah, there are some poignant additional things within these 4 chapters beyond just shall. Shall forms the absolute core of these 4 verses, but there are other things that work in here as well.
Yeah, that is a great quote. It was a fantastic quote. I believe you said it to the French when he was over there, kind of courting them for support. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment about 4:19, where it says, the master said, while his parents are alive, the son may not go abroad to a distance. And the reason I look at that from a very practical perspective, that if you're going very far away, then you're obviously ignoring your duties back at home. So that the idea that, just practically speaking, if you're, if I go overseas, then, I'm not necessarily doing my duty to my family. So that's just one, just a very practical way of looking at it. So Jason, followed by James, and then we'll go to our next set of chapters.
Yeah, I just have to thank you, Amang, putting this quote. I think it's very good, and I almost forget why I totally forget why I raised my hand because amongst the comment there is a lot, and then unfortunately a lot of Confucian family didn't follow this way, kind of, so let me thank my parents much more, because my father worked so hard. So right now I can have a choice, have the leisure time to do this. And I also follow the same spirit, and I will let my kids choose what they want to do, because I also work quite hard, during my younger age. So I think that's a lot to think about, when we talk about shall, okay, and then instead of request your kids doing something, let's think about what we have to do, for ourselves and for our parents.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I feel like each week we can thank Amon for his, kind of take a step back from providing us a new insight. James, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I think, yeah, I agree. I agree with Jason. That I don't really know. The whole issue of parenting and children. The thing that occurred to me was because of what you said, Joe. I guess this going to live in other countries, this sometimes helps the family survive at a much higher level. I know that a lot of Mexicans moved to the United States. I
Yes.
lived in Oregon. I mean, I come from Southern California, where there's a lot of immigrants, but especially up in Oregon, I noticed there were just a lot of Mexican, not just Mexicans, but from Central America too, but a lot of immigrants that were just there to send money home. In other words, they had a lot of construction work there in Oregon, and they were sending a lot of money home. And I think the same thing in California. They're sending money to Mexico. So a lot of the income for Mexico is people working in the United States, and it's that's a kind of filial piety, I think. Of economic filial piety. In other words, you travel in order to support your parents. And we don't experience that so much as Americans because we have the Social Security system. So my parents were always working or taken care of. They were either they already had property, they were working, or they had Social Security, and you didn't have to worry about them so much. But but I think the situation in Mexico was not as comfortable. And by people working in the United States, immigrating to the United States and working here, they were able to send money home to support their parents. I think this happens in other countries as well. I have a daughter that lives in Canada, and which is where her mother was from, and another daughter that lives in Germany. So we have a family of, except for the two daughters are immigrants, and my wife is an immigrant. My ex-wife, rather, I'm divorced, but my son is not. So, but it's an interesting kind of life pattern that you immigrate to get better, not just better life experiences, but you also sometimes arrive at a kind of a better lifestyle, perhaps, than yes or no. But with my daughter being so interested in foreign languages, it worked out very well for her, the one that lives in Germany.
Yeah, it is an interesting aspect of familial piety. I mean, you see it, especially now in Venezuela, where a lot of professionals have actually immigrated to all over the world and are sending money back home. In fact, they feel like that's one of the reasons Venezuela will not recover anytime soon, is because there's been such a brain drain of professionals, medical professionals and investment professionals. But this also true. This happened as well with the fall of the Soviet Union. It felt like it was one of the greatest brain drains there ever was. And while they went to foreign countries to be able to send money back home, I know quite a few Ukrainians that did that, that were immigrated to the United States various ways. So yes, that is a form of familial piety that differs from the Confucian writings that we've read here this evening. Thank you for sharing that. So no good deed goes unpunished. And so can I ask you to read 23, 24, 25, and 26?
Okay, number 23. The master said, "The cautious seldom err." Number 24. The master said, "The superior man wishes to be slow in his speech and earnest in his conduct." 25. The master said, "Virtue is not left to stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbors." 26. Xi, you said, "In serving a prince, frequent remonstrances lead to disgrace. Between friends, frequent reproofs make the friendship distant." Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Mon, do you want to read, or I mean,
Yeah, I can do that.
Sure.
Did we miss 22 though?
Yes, we did. That was totally my fault.
Okay, I'll jump back and do 22 if you like.
Yeah, forgive me for that. Yeah, that was my fault. Apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the Leggy translation if you don't mind, James.
The master said, "The reason why the ancients did not readily give utterance to their words was that they feared lest their actions should not come up to them." Kind of awkward.
Yeah, my apologies.
I don't know. Oh no, I don't know the DC Lao is any less awkward. This one is grammatically strange. 422. The master said, "In antiquity, men were loath to speak. This was because they counted it shameful if their person failed to keep up with their words." 423. The master said, "It is rare for a man to miss the mark through holding on to essentials." 424. The master said, "The gentleman desires to be halting in speech, but quick in action. 425, the master said, virtue never stands alone. It is bound to have neighbors. 426, Zuyu said, to be importunate with one's lord will mean humiliation. To be importunate with one's friends will mean estrangement.
Interesting.
So,
Thank you.
Aman, can you, what's the word you use?
Importunate. I was going to ask you to.
Importunate. Yeah.
Yeah, IMPORTUNATE.
Importunate. Okay, that's okay.
Offhand, I think it means acting out of turn and
Yeah, that means
out of
acting
place.
It's a mouthful.
Yes. Yeah, I think we, okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, 22. Another people think it's art. Okay, the master said, the ancients will hesitate to speak because they will be ashamed if their action will not match up to their words. So whenever we heard people talk about the ancient or the old, the ancient people, that means the good people, the right thing. Okay, so Confucius is talking about the right thing, the old people. That means the good thing. Okay, because they careful about what they speak. Because when I say something and I didn't do it, they feel very ashamed of that. So they be careful on what they said, and that's why on 423, the master said, people who erred from temperance are few. Okay, so I think temperance is the right word for this one. Yeah. Okay, so that means you kind of control, not going too much. I think he meant the language. Okay, because you are not. You are talking too much, or you are too exaggerate. Okay, so I think that's the Confucius concern. 24. Again, the reason I talk about because language, because the words, because all these one are about the words. Okay, 424. The master said the Junzi is desired or expected to be hesitant in speaking, but sharp in acting. Okay, so this word "na" is a very Confucius word. You don't have like a quick response when people say, "Can I do this?" You don't say yes, I can do it. No, that's not good. That Confucius way. You should hold up. Okay, for a moment, think through. Then say, "Let me try." Okay, and quickly do it. Not say like, "Yeah, I do it." Okay, and then after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, still have no action. That's Confucius doesn't like this way. You want people to hesitate, think through, then answer. Okay, and quickly to do it. After you answer, quickly to do it. 425. The master said, the virtuous person is never lonely. He always has neighbors. Okay, again, here has no subject. It just say virtue, not only, must have neighbor. If I have to translate word by word, it's virtuous. Okay, so I just have to assume only the person can have neighbor. So I have to assume the person who practices virtue, or the virtuous person, is never lonely because people will get together. That reflect on the very first one, right? Talking about the ren, people who usually live in the neighborhood with ren, the benevolent neighborhood. So I think that's a perfect match with the chapter 1. So look like chapter 26 is redundant because it's totally unrelated to others, and all start with the master said, but this one start with Ziyu said. Okay. That's a very funny thing because unfortunately in analog. A lot of people's name have you, Y-O-U, something called yo, you, and they all different. But when you translate to English, a lot of people will mistake as you, okay? So basically that's people's name. So here is another person, Confucius' disciple, Ziyu, that's his name. He said, serving the prince insistently caused disgrace. Gathering friends insistently cause estrangement. So here, I think here means you do it in too often. Su, this word, su, I think it means you do it often, but unnecessary. So if you serve your prince too often and unnecessary, you will cause disgrace. You gather friend here, 朋友, I will read as verb. Okay, you gather your friend too often and unnecessary. You will distance with your friend. I think that's Ziyu's comment, not Confucius said it. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Aman, would you like to comment?
Yes, I'm going to have one quick comment. I'm going to have to run here shortly.
Sure.
But this is one of the only times where I think Jason and I don't necessarily agree on that word choice for what he's reading as shu, and I'm reading as shou, which may sound very similar, but they do mean different things. Or actually, sorry, the pronunciation is not what's necessarily different. The tone is different. If it's shu with that dropping tone, then it would mean that sort of frequent or God, sorry, this is why I'm getting rummy in the evening. Shou
okay.
with that dropping tone means repeatedly or frequent. Shu with a looping tone is a different word, which means to enumerate shortcomings. And to me, that chapter 26 does make more sense if it's read as shu as opposed to shou. However, other than that little bit of nitpicking, I do think that these chapters are translated very well. I think they make a lot more sense than some of the other translations I've read. I appreciate James reading the James Legge version. Legge was the first English translator of Confucian into the English language back in the 19th century. What he did in the way of Chinese scholarship is a feat that nobody can deny was instrumental in bringing this work into the Western corpus, into the view of Westerns. But it is sometimes, because it's such an old translation, a little antiquated and somewhat, it has an almost Bible scholar flavor to it. I think Jason's translation is much more colloquial, much easier to read and understand, generally speaking. Yeah, other than that, I don't want to do breakdown line by line. I want to point out that one point of discretion. And since I've got the floor, I will use it to say thank you all and good evening. I'm going to be running. I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.
Oh, we're looking forward to seeing you as well, Mon. Thank you as always for your comments and your contributions. It's always a joy to have you
don't
here.
forget the chapter 5.
Yes, Aman, don't forget
I will
chapter
do
5.
my homework.
Yes.
But
yes.
honestly, chapter 5 is very difficult. It's very difficult because every chapter with a different, you run into a different person. So I probably need to do some research. So I also very slow also. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to complain because of all the work you both do, so I can't. Now, if anybody has any
Thank you, Aman.
comments, uh,
I guess
thanks,
I'll
Aman.
put my hand up.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Well,
sure.
just to be friendly, I don't know. It's that these are pretty deep.
They are.
I like the Legge translation of number 23. He says the cautious seldom err. So it sounds more English. It is a better English proverb in the shape that Legge gave it, and so it stands up better as English, I think, without being as authentic as Jason's translation. And I liked the word importunance. I think,
Yeah, so did I.
yeah, that is a beautiful word to use for number 26. So that I'll just leave it there. These are very self-explanatory, I think, and he who practices virtue has neighbors. I
It's an
mean,
interesting one.
genius. Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's there's other. I think he says these things over and over. I think this is one that he's I thought he expressed before.
Yeah, this is
Thank you.
actually why I wanted to get these what is it? These 4 or 5 chapters in prior to our, because that way we finish up book 4. Does anybody else have any comments that they would like to share about any of these chapters?
Yeah, Joe.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
With number 23, my translation, the master said it is rare for a man to miss the mark through holding on to essentials. Now, I'm gathering that means moral essentials, our moral principles, our moral compass. Is that correct, or is there more to that?
I would think virtue. Yes, I think that's actually accurate. But Jason, do you wish to comment?
I think that I like George. Can you read your translation one more time?
George or Joe?
Yes.
George. Yeah.
Yes. The master said it is rare for a man to miss the mark through holding on to essentials.
That's 23.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Actually, well, again, I try very hard to match with the word. So look like there's no target here, and then and I really like what James read. Cautious seldom err. Right, that's very concise and probably and no subject, put this way, okay, and probably fit Confucius' tone. So I'm going to modify, my translation in this way because it sounds great. Yeah.
Anything additional, George?
No, so I mean, I'm gathering that there is some confusion or there are various interpretations of the word essentials.
It's funny if you think of what is not essential, what is an excess, what is extravagant. I guess that is something that's trying to be avoided in that process, right?
Oh, George, I got your point. Got your Who is the translator?
This is a Penguin. I think it's the same one Aman was using.
Oh, was it?
I just have to say, so the last word is not essential. So I think it's probably a misunderstanding the word. The last word is 嫌疑. Okay, that means hardly happen. Not means non-essential. Okay, that means frequency or hardly, seldom. I think that's that mean. Doesn't mean non-essential. I will guess that's a misunderstanding word.
Thank you for that. Kevin.
I want to, the English have one phrase called silence is golden. This is going to first from 422 to 425, explain why. I would say from Confucius way. 22 said if why I want going to speak, hesitate to speak, because I don't want to do something I cannot, I didn't not doing well, or, so, then and the day I'm going to feel ashamed of myself. I didn't do it or doing well. And also 23 is, for me, understand this one is, if you control your words, hard to make a mistake. If I'm going to use my do again. Oh, anyway, the 24 is the similar to 22. Basically, when speaking, very hesitate here what you speak, rather than put action first. Or I will use the behavior. I'm not sure the thing, like, yeah, basically I watch my behavior. I can we put on action rather than just speak. 25, yeah, there for me, I'm not sure Jason agree with. It's basically Chinese words. Any noun could be act like a verb. This one is noun, the virtue also act like adjective noun, like who, the person who with the, then never feel, don't feel alone. They have neighbors. And 26 is very interesting too. Okay, the opposite of the 22, 25. We're going, if I'm consistently serve my princess or manager, talk to you need to do it, you need to do this. That's not the way. So here's from your own behavior to talk to just to others, from your princess or to friend. So very interesting. That's by the way, summary is let's explain something. Silence gold. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. James.
Yeah, that was great to bring our attention to those things. Yeah, the number 22, the ancients. I really like this idea that that you just pointed out, that if there's this possibility, all of these are a little bit conservative. Okay, I think this is a very conservative group, and the idea that here is that you can't, if you say you're going to do something, be careful that your words that you don't accomplish it. So I think that was the thought of the ancients, or why the ancients were so silent, perhaps, that they didn't. And this is make sure you in I think in popular culture in English we say always keep your promises, right? So this is that's the way most people sort of interpret it. But it's this idea that be careful that your pronouncements become accomplishments. In other words, don't just spout off about the way everything can be, but you should be a doer, as well. So I think that's a brilliant kind of sentiment. And this one that talks about speaking slowly and being earnest in your deportment. I think I know one. I think that applies to one famous People's Republic of China politician. When he talks, it's like very measured. You can understand. I'm not sure, like, if somebody here that understands Chinese, but it's like always making himself clear, and measured speech, and looking very earnest. Like I'm so glad even the words, I'm so glad if he's talking to another state leader, I'm so glad to see you, I've always loved our interchanges, and so forth. So it's this kind of charm, personal charm, and slow speech, very earnest deportment, even if, yeah, never mind.
Well said, James. Yes, I agree with you, Jason. Jason, would you like to give us a preview of chapter 5 just briefly, and then we'll go through announcements and we'll call it an evening.
Okay, chapter 5 it's a lot of name. Unfortunately, it's very different. It's a lot of name, okay, people's name. And start with Confucius in-laws. He married his Confucius daughter to that one, and then blah blah blah, and they marry his brother's daughter to another student, and then another commenter. So it's a different. So technically, I can do if I just do the word translation, forget about the background, that would be much easier. But I think it's like, since I started to make sure the background is right, so I better make sure I really understand the historical background. So some are a little bit vague. I have to figure out. So that's it.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. It's a little late, but I was going to ask everybody what they got from this particular book, but we can comment on that maybe at another time. I think that this book was definitely brought us back to focus on virtue and how we can live our lives practically, or how, in a very practical way. And I think we saw that in the text this evening. And it led to a lot of good conversations. It was definitely much less challenging than I felt like was book 3, as far as having conversation. But with that, I will go to some great upcoming events that we have coming up here at 52 Living Ideas. Tomorrow, it's part of Comprehensivist Wednesdays, and that is done in conjunction with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society, for which I am part of. And we're going to be talking about reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and what they have in relationship, and how they relate to one another. And what is reading at its best? What is writing at its best? So, it should be an interesting discussion. On Thursday, we have The Evolving Self by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Obviously the name is not perfectly said there, but the psychology for the third millennium. And I don't know chapter they're on, but it really doesn't matter. You can jump in on any of those discussions, and I will be on 7 p.m. on Thursday evening. Also on Thursday evening, we'll be covering the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17. We only have about 6 weeks left, which is actually somewhat sad, but it's been quite a journey, because it's really been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed going over it. I hope to maybe we do a wrap-up session or something along those lines, but it's really been transformative, and and Shrikant has really put a lot of effort into it, and one of the main catalysts, Yogeshwar, has been incredibly generous with his time each week, 2 times a week, speaking for at least 4 hours each week. So very, very grateful for that. And we'll be covering the Bhagavad Gita as well on Friday. And then Saturday, we have Asian philosophies, practicing Neo-Taoism, the Settlementalists. Is that correct?
Yeah. Because last
All
week
right.
we talked about the rationalist. Okay.
Okay.
So this week we talk about the
The sentiment.
sentimentalist. So
Okay.
the strangest thing would be when you are rationalist and you put it in practice, why it's become sentimentalist. So that's another interesting, So I think
Interesting.
the relation is very subtle, and I just try to figure out or try to explain this part.
That should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be away, but I hope, I don't know, maybe I could figure out a way to listen in. But I think that's really going to be that's going to be a lot of fun. And finally, we will be starting a book series on Sunday, August 7th, and it'll be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, exploring the art of interpretation. So that it'll be on Sunday. If you're interested in joining that, that'll be the first meeting of that group. But those are just some of our upcoming events. And thank you everyone for your comments this evening. Thank you for your time. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm very happy that we got through book 4. And I'm really looking forward to starting book 5 next week. And I'll see everyone then. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you,
Joseph.
James.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
James.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
George.